Steve, thanks so much for inviting me to your studio today.
Well, this is a series of stuff, so this is actually fun to talk about these issues.
Yeah. Well, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
You know what a stoplight is, right?
Of course. I blow through them all. No, I'm kidding. Of course, we all know what a stoplight is.
And where do you see them?
At every intersection.
Intersections. Only intersections, right?
Only intersections.
Okay. So you know an intersection's coming up. There's 3 colors.
Yeah.
Red, yellow, green.
Red, I'm going to stop.
Green, you're going to
go.
And yellow?
Well, you're asking me what I'm really going to do? I'm going to hit the gas and try to get through that darn thing as quickly as I can.
Absolutely, especially if it's slick out, right? It's raining. It'd be not as safe to stop as it would to go through.
But I'd probably get a ticket.
You might get a ticket if you get caught, right? Yellow is intended for caution, proceed with care,
right?
Whatever that means. Red, there's no interpretation. Green, there's no interpretation,
Stop, go.
Right? Yellow, there is.
Yeah.
The reason I mention this is because for performance management, we have to set expectations before we start. And you start at the very beginning with that pre-attraction.
Yeah,
right?
So it's an interesting thing about setting expectations that we're on the more of the recruiting, candidate development side and so forth. And setting expectations with candidates about what the job entails is, as we were talking about, is not an easy thing because most clients don't even know how to set expectations. And we've been talking about this for quite some time.
Well, and there's expectations at that individual contributor level.
Yeah.
But then there's expectations within the context of the organization.
Oh,
culture
good point.
Piece.
Sure.
So what do you do to differentiate setting that up front when you're attracting and recruiting?
We actually get into some challenges with that because when you start asking, if you're my hiring manager, right, and I say,
right.
Joan, give me the 6-month and 12-month expectations of this role and clear KPIs.
Right.
Maybe 10% of the hiring leaders actually know what those are. So then we're actually left with trying to finagle what those expectations are, which we don't like to do, and we can't communicate it clearly. So we have to nail them down. Specifically, what are the things they're accountable for? How are you going to measure it? How often are you going to measure it? And it's like pulling teeth.
Well, but you find out in your annual review, right, how you're doing. And everybody loves those.
I don't know of anybody who likes an annual review,
right.
on whether it's the employer or the employee.
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
So what if you had self-driven performance evaluation?
Help me understand what that is.
Okay, so you're my supervisor.
Yep.
I report to you.
Okay.
Maybe I need a frequency of once a week check-ins.
Okay.
Okay. And so we have an agreement. I say, Steve, once a week, I just need 5 minutes of your time.
Yep.
And you say, great, go ahead, set it up, get it on the calendar, we'll do this.
Yep.
Right? We have those expectations there, we have the conversation, and it's self-driven. So I'm going to get on your calendar. You don't have to think about it, really. You have to participate.
So as the manager, it's not being mandated.
It's not being mandated.
The cycle is.
Right.
Okay.
And maybe I adjust it over time.
Yeah.
Or maybe I only need to check in once a month. But it's kind of something that we agree upon up front. Okay? Now, a really enlightened leader will take a lead in that conversation from the point of, how am I doing as a leader?
Now you're changing the conversation.
A little bit.
Because that's generally, what have you done?
Right.
Maybe how I can help you, but there's never the comment of, how am I doing as a leader?
Right. So when you flip that question and you go first and you become transparent, what does that do to the conversation?
Oh, completely changes it. Makes it much more comfortable for the employee especially. So performance, you're starting to look at my performance too as the manager. So performance management goes back, you're saying it goes both ways?
It does go both ways, right? It's a conversation. It's not a point in time event. It's a continual conversation. And if you ask me on a regular basis, let's say we're checking in once a week, and you keep asking me, how am I doing as a leader?
Yeah.
After about the 3rd or 4th time, I might say, Steve, you don't have to ask me that question every time. You're doing really good. How about if I just let you know when I need something different?
So I think about it from this perspective, since I'm on the front end of this, right? I'm on the recruiting side of this.
Right.
If I went to a candidate, Joan, you were my candidate, and I said, hey, Joan, listen, the manager that you're going to be working with and working for, this is kind of how they do it. It's up to you to drive when you have the conversation to get the help from them, as opposed to every 4 months you're going to be doing this, you're going to be evaluated and so forth. It completely changes the conversation around what's expected. So it starts way in the beginning.
It does, and it shifts the accountability model to the individual.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So have you seen companies actually do it this way, in this more the self-selection model?
So I'm having conversations with employer groups
Yeah.
around this.
Okay.
They're very intrigued.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see some people move in that direction.
And the initial results must be good.
It's just a different conversation with employees.
Yeah.
They're not feeling like they're being put upon anymore or being tested.
Yeah.
Did you dot your I's and cross your T's? And so the thought process changes, and people are actually engaging in higher level of thought than just tactical performance.
So it's a different view. So when I hear performance management, I always think I think of the annual reviews like you just joked about, right? But you're actually talking about this ongoing two-way conversation that builds a relationship versus just beating somebody over the head and saying, I got to give you your 4-month review or your 3-month review or something along those lines. It unconfuses the confusion of what performance management really is.
It absolutely does.
That's a completely different conversation.
And the outcomes are very different.
Well, it sounds like the
people want
outcomes
to
would be-
perform. When you ask somebody, for example, around deadlines, when do you think you can get this back to me?
Yeah.
Chances are they're going to be tougher on themselves than you would have ever thought.
I had this happen yesterday to me where I asked one of the team, I gave him something and said, hey, I need to have this thing done. When do you think you can get it done? She said 24 hours. I'm like, I don't need it in 24 hours. I need it in about 5 days. Is that
Right.
cool? So I agree with you. It builds a different level of accountability on behalf of the employee.
It does. The accountability is different. The trust level is different. The relationship is very different.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a really great perspective around this idea of performance management. And this is time number 2 where you've actually unconfused the confusion of HR, Joan.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thanks again.